Hey crafty people, welcome back to my channel, and in case you're new here, I'm Sarah, also known as Craft Nerd because I'm a nerd who loves to craft. I do paper crafting, card making, junk journaling, and mixed media art. Let's get crafting! Welcome. Today we're going to work on July's Christmas card, and in case you're new to my channel, I decided at the beginning of 2025 every month I'd work on at least one or more Christmas cards so that hopefully come December I won't be frantically making Christmas cards. And today, in honor of World Watercolor Month, we're going to do an easy watercolor Christmas cards. So I've got some cookie cutters that we're going to use for the watercolor part. But before we get to that, I want to do a little background stamping on my paper. And I've got Canson XL watercolor paper, and I've got it cut down into my preferred card size of 5.5 by 4 1/4. You can do whatever size you prefer. And I've pulled out some stamps from my stash that I've had forever. This one's from the Stampin Place. I don't even know if they're still around. This one is a Stampendous one. I've got that one, and then this one is by Rubbernecker, which has changed its name, and I don't remember what its name is. I will look that up, and it's Twas the Night 653, in case they still have this one. I don't know. And I am going to grab my mouse pad, because I don't necessarily want to get really good impressions. I just want to kind of create a little interest in the background. And I think I'm going to go, if you have watercolor paper, you'll notice there's one side that has a little bit more texture than the other, generally speaking, in your cold press watercolor paper. So I'm going to use the smoother side since we are going to do some stamping. That'll make it a little bit easier. Pull out some Stampin' blocks. And let's see. Now, because we are going to be watercoloring on this, I want to be sure that I use a waterproof ink. So you're going to want to use, you can use StazOn, you can use Archival Ink. I'm going to try out, I finally got Pebble Beach, which has been on my wish list for a little while. I'm going to try some Speckled Egg maybe. You can also use pigment ink. Like VersaFine Clair, but I think all of my VersaFine Clair colors are a little too intense for what I want to do. Yeah, I think I've got all like the really vibrant colors. Just try it. I'm gonna do maybe one Salvaged Patina and some vintage photos. So those are the colors I'm gonna use for stamping. Let's do a blue one first, and I'm gonna use this one which has got snowflakes on it. And I am going to be very haphazard in my inking, because again, I'm just trying to create a little bit of background interest. I don't necessarily want to create full coverage. In fact, part of me thinks I should just stamp this without the block, but part of me thinks it's also going to be cumbersome. So I'm just going to kind of put some random ink on there and do a little, you know what, let's do this. Let's go ahead and do it without the stamp pad and see what we get. Do a little there, get a little down over here, maybe some up there, see what we get over there. I would like a little bit more over here. So yeah, we're just getting a hint of it in the background. So let's do one using Speckled Egg. I'm gonna just do it a little bit over here, a little down there, some over there, a little over there. Speckled Egg's definitely a little darker, but I still kind of like it. Like that's kind of what I was looking for, something a little haphazard, not all that, you know, prevalent. Let's pull out the Twas the Night one. And another one, and let's see what we get when we use Pebble Beach, which is a new to me stamp pad. This is the first time I'm using it, or ink pad, but I keep seeing it in various YouTube videos I watch, and I was like, ooh, I kind of like the color. Oh, look, and I stamped this completely upside down. Right? Yes, that was upside down, so we'll go that way. I like that. Let's do one more with the Pebble Beach, and I'm not even gonna clean off the stamp, or re-ink the stamp. We're just gonna stamp around and see what we get. Got a little bit more in the middle this time because that's where it still had ink, but that's all right. Still like it. Let's do one with Vintage Photo. And for the Vintage Photo, because it's going to be a lot darker, what I think I'm going to do is just take a piece of paper and do that to remove some of the ink, and then stick it on and just do that and not get hardly any on there. Do a little bit more. See if we can get a little bit more over here. All right, so maybe I shouldn't bother wiping it off because it's not that juicy of an ink pad, and doing that just results in there not being anything on there. So let's do another one. And we'll pull out the last stamp. Oop, they're not there this time. I'm kind of thinking I may pull out Hickory Smoke for this one. Get us a little gray. And again, these are archival inks so that when they get wet, we're not going to have to worry about them smearing or smudging or anything like that. Part of my case broke on my Hickory Smoke. Let's do that. Try and get some over here and over here. A little bit over here. And again, we're going for background, so it does not need to be perfect. It does not need to be, you know, all that legible. It's just creating a little bit of interest in our background. All right, I'm gonna have a bit of a cleanup and then I'll be back and we'll start the watercolor technique. Okay, so I've cleaned up. I've got my cookie cutters out, and these guys I got at in the $1-$5 section at Target, and this was from a medal from I think probably a holiday 5K my sister did that she didn't want anymore, so I was like, well, I'll take it. I'll use it in my crafting. No, I swear I saw a video years ago, I don't even remember by who, where I saw it, where they essentially used the cookie cutter like a stamp and put the watercolor on it and stamped it on. And I tried that last night to make sure it would work, and it was an epic fail. So what I'm going to do instead is I'm going to put my cookie cutter down, and I'm just going to use it to trace. And actually, let's do it cut side down. So I'm just going to I'm using a watercolor pencil because it'll dissolve into the piece as we go along, and tracing inside my cookie cutter. So this way, you know, if you're not very skilled at drawing, don't want to draw, want to do something other than a watercolor and stamping technique, you can use cookie cutters. Now, Don't use your good cookie cutters that you use for making your Christmas cookies. Because once you use them for crafting, you should not put them back in your kitchen and use them for food again. So these are designated craft cookie cutters. All right, and what I'm gonna do is I'm just going to make sure I have paint ready, and I am gonna use my Daniel Smith's watercolor paints. You can use Distress inks. Pretty much any dye-based ink is water soluble and will work. You just need to smush it onto like an acrylic block and pick it up and paint from there. You can also use watercolor pencils like I did for the outline of this. And we're just gonna go around. Now that we've got our shape here, I'm gonna wet it. I swear it is too stinking hot here in Florida because I'm wetting it and it's drying as I go. I'm just gonna grab some paint and kind of drop my paint in and go along the edges and just let the paint do what it wants to do. Yeah, like this part's already dry. I don't understand how it got already dry already. I just re-wet it. Florida in summer and attempting to do wet on wet techniques don't always go well together. And with watercolors, it's gonna want to travel to where there's water and stop where there isn't water. So I'm going to pick that up and try and get the water moving around, the paint moving around. All right, let's get some spots wet again and see if we can keep them wet, because I want to drop some more paint in because it needs more character. Now I'm going to take a little bit of Bliss, what is it? Liquid watercolor, and it's a pearl, because, come on, it's a snowflake. All right, I'm going to set that one aside, let it dry, and while it's drying, we can work on the next one. Grab the candy cane and let's do the candy cane on this one. All right, it just doesn't work for my brain to do it that way. I want to do it going this way. Although if we do it that way, that would work. All right. I'm gonna trace our candy cane. And it is a chunky monkey candy cane, but that's all right. Let's see, we need some red. Kind of just going straight from the pan on this since I'm trying to keep it simple, so I'm not doing a lot of mixing of colors. But what we'll do is come in and start doing our stripes. All right, I'm gonna set him aside and let him dry. All right, let's do Mr. Gingerbread Man. Making sure I got that right side up. right, now with cookies, they're usually darker at the edges than in the center, so I'm going to take a darker brown and go around the edges on this guy. And hopefully, if it's still wet enough in some spots, the darker brown will kind of bleed into the piece and blend. And no, it's not doing that because it is stinking hot here. Moral of this story, don't watercolor in the afternoon in Florida in July. There we got blending, there we did not. We're gonna fix this. There we go, we're gonna let him dry. And then last we've got our reindeer. Shortening the nose because I'm gonna make this a Rudolph and give it a red nose. I want to bring some of that more reddish brown in. Let him dry. I'm gonna bring back our first snowflake and see how that one's doing. Got a bit of a puddle going on. What I'm gonna do is grab a clean, somewhat dry brush and sop up some of this color. Move it around a little bit. Then I'm going to turn this right side up, hit it with my heat tool. So what I'm going to do is come in with some more concentrated paint and go around my edges to kind of clean them up and make it less messy looking. Okay, I'm also going to take some of my pearl, mix it with that blue, and add some details inside my snowflake. Right, now I think it needs spatters. And let me get some of that blue again and mix it with more of that pearl, and we'll splatter that on. Gonna set this aside to dry. We're gonna do one more thing before we're done with this one. All right, let's wipe up the blue paint off the mat here before we get it all over the place. And I'm gonna take some gray. I'm gonna water it down a lot. Because I just want to give the hint of shape to it. A little bit. And we're gonna thin that out so that it doesn't look like our candy canes dirty. And of course I'm getting the red reactivated. I probably should have done this before I did the red. Just coming in with a clean brush to do any cleanup and blend it out and make sure this one got a little out of control. Oh, and that one's getting a little too dry over here. Coming in with clean, mostly dry brush. I'm gonna do a little bit more red at our edges. While we've got the red out, let's bring our reindeer over and do his nose. Just a little bit the gray for the tail. And let's do some dark brown to kind of give a dividing line for his legs. And I'm gonna grab my Dr. P.H. Martin's Bleed Proof White. And we're gonna set him aside. We're gonna pull over our gingerbread man. A little too watered down, so just to make sure it stands out nice and white. Now, you could do this step with a gel pen or with like a Posca pen. So that is also an option. His tail's dry. Okay, we can bring him over. I'm just gonna use a little of the Bleed Proof White to add a little texture to the tail, just to get a little bit more of do inside ears. candy cane, what we're gonna do is we're gonna come in and give highlights on the top edge. And the outside edge. To finish these guys off, I think I'm gonna trim them down just a hair so that I can mat them on a darker cardstock. Oh, our reindeer needs an eyeball. I'm gonna grab a pen for that. I'm just gonna give him an eyeball. I'm just gonna shave off a hair on either side. So I was 4 1/4 wide, so I'm kind of shaving them down to 4. And we'll take a little off the bottom. And a little off the top. So I'm gonna do that on all of these guys real quick. Okay, should wait for that to dry before I cut it since I just stuck my fingers in his. All right, let's fix that. All right, I'm gonna let him dry and we'll come back and do the very last bit. Okay, so everybody's dry and I have gone ahead and grabbed some, cut down some cardstock to serve as the backing, and then off camera I'll put them on card bases. But before we attach them to the background cardstock, what I wanna do is add some ink around the edges of them to kind of vignette them so that, you know, it draws the eye in. So we're just gonna go around, and I've grabbed Vintage Photo for this one. That guy, and I'm gonna do this one with the Vintage Photo. For the candy cane, I'm gonna do red, so I'm gonna use Lumberjack Plaid Distress ink. And I'm okay if it picks up some of the brown that's on my mat. That's not going to be a big deal. That one, I am going to clean that up before I do the snowflake, since that one's going to get done in blue. And I'm going to use tumbled glass. Okay, so let me clean up and we'll attach them. And I am just going to use some art glitter glue to attach these guys to some cardstock, and then I'll put them on card bases later. We got 4 quick and easy Christmas cards using cookie cutters to create our images. So that's all for today. If you enjoyed this video, please do all the things that lets YouTube know you enjoyed the video. Like, subscribe, hit the notification bell, leave me a comment down below. Thanks for joining me, and happy crafting.